It sounds like the Big Ten is moving on as is.
Expansion, realignment, and scheduling agreements are always in the news. So we're back on the Big Mountain to keep you updated on what's going on with the Big Ten.
Welcome back to the Big Mountain. I am JY, and this is my good friend Steve. We have some Big Ten information to talk about. And talking about the 26 and 27 football seasons here, Steve, and what that might mean for both an SEC scheduling agreement and for membership changes. Where are we at here with these 2 years?
Yeah, so this isn't going to be necessarily a huge update, but I did get some interesting information. I really want to share it with our dwellers.
Okay.
I think it's important to kind of get it out there, keep people updated. So from my Big Ten contacts, what I've heard is that the main office, the Big Ten conference office, has put down the word to the ADs that we're going to go ahead and move forward with setting the 26 and 27 football season schedules, okay? Like you mentioned, Big Ten likes to do these 2 years at a time, and once they get them locked in and the ADs know what schools they're playing and whether it's going to be home away, not necessarily what week, but what schools are playing home and away, then they can start planning the logistics that we talk about all the time. Once they get those locked in, they're not changing. And we saw this a couple years ago. Yep. They locked in 24, 25. Now they're ready to move on and schedule 26 and 27. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, that means there's not going to be any conference expansion, no additional members to the Big Ten, at least until the 2028 season would be the first point at this point. Once they get these schedules locked in, no new additional members would start until the very earliest, the 28 season. It also means they're anticipating no SEC scheduling agreement, at least until the 28 season. So for 26, 27, they're going to get these locked in. They're going to play with the members that they have, get these schedules going, and move forward at this point. Now, does it mean that conference expansion is off the table? Absolutely not.
Right.
You and I have talked about in the past. We said the Big Ten, if they had their preference, they would want to wait till closer to the 2030 season, as close as possible. Before adding any new members. And we saw with the settlement, the ACC settlement with FSU and Clemson, there's some financial incentive there to kind of push this out to like the 2030 season. Yeah. FSU and Clemson are going to be getting more money, additional revenue through that time period, and then those exit fees really drop off until I think we get to like 2031, and then it's like a flat rate, much lower after that. So this move kind of aligns with what we've been saying about the Big Ten's preferences for expansion. I think they were willing to kind of be open. If FSU would have announced right after the settlement, like we're leaving, we want to be somewhere in a year or 2 years from now, I think they would have worked with them. But at this point, with what's going on, they're ready to set the 26, 27 seasons to go with no changes. Now, also, the Big Ten is still very interested in SEC scheduling agreement. Okay. They were hopeful to have that scheduling agreement as part of a 26 and 27 season schedule. But with the recent, I don't want to say fallout, but maybe kind of disagreements and comments, the SEC kind of backed off with that. The CFP conversation kind of took over. Yeah. And the Big Ten does not want to. They want to do a scheduling agreement, but not until the SEC matches them in the number of conference games, which is 9 at this point. Yep. So for now, all of that is on hold. They still want to pursue it, but that means we're not going to see any expansion, any new teams, any SEC crossover games unless individual teams work that out until at the very earliest the 28th season. What are your thoughts on that? Are you surprised?
I'm not overly surprised. I mean, it matches what you've been saying for 2 years, ever since we started the channel, that really 27 would be the earliest, but you were even pushing like the 28, 29, 30. And so now, am I surprised that it's not going to be in 27? Not really. Especially now knowing what the ACC schools are getting in this interim period, not just for a year, but for a few years. So it looks like the window, at least for the Big Ten, the next window kind of coming up is 28. Do you think that has any effect on the SEC? Like when one shoe drops, do they both kind of drop? Or do you think this really doesn't matter to the SEC a whole lot if the SEC wants to move forward with some sort of realignment and or changing to a 9-game schedule. Obviously, they're their own conference. Or do you see realignment here? When it happens, it's going to happen at the same time?
I think for the most part, the SEC is not going to be bothered by this.
Okay.
It was really the Big Ten who had initiated this, like, let's play the same number of games.
Okay.
Let's have a scheduling agreement. And the SEC, I think, was open to it at first, but then, you start having these dueling press conferences, and then we have to put out propaganda pamphlets about how great our conference is.
Yeah.
I think now they've just kind of retreated into their normal position, which is we're the biggest and the baddest football conference. Like, we don't need anybody else.
Yeah.
So I think they're just going to do their own thing for now.
Okay.
We'll see. I don't think the SEC is going to make any moves until they get that CFP thing figured out.
Sure.
How many, auto berths and how many teams and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, and I know when we started doing this channel, the Florida State, we have a lot of Florida State viewers.
Sure.
They were ready. They were chomping at the bit. Like, they honestly and truthfully believed like that they could be playing in the Big Ten basically this year, like 2026.
Yeah.
And we said at the time, there's just no way it wasn't going to happen. And I think this just solidifies the timelines, because the Big Ten, I think, would have been open if things really moved fast.
Yeah.
It would have been open if an opportunity presented itself, like we talked about. But I think this solidifies what the natural timelines are. Which is basically moving everything closer to 2030. We see the Big Ten media contract is up right around then. The new extended CFP deal is up right around that time.
Right.
Everything, all of the timelines, and the ACC agreement where those payoffs start to drop, where they really drop 2030, 29, 30, 31.
Sure.
So I think everything is just kind of solidifying that timeline, and the Big Ten is basically saying now, like, okay, yeah, we don't need to do anything right now. Let's just lock in our own members, keep our own ADs happy, because if you remember the last wave of realignment, the ADs really pushed back and said, this is a pain in the neck, this is ridiculous, all this travel and all this stuff. And as we talk about in our show, the presidents make the decisions that for the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But the ADs, and we've interviewed quite a few ADs, the ADs have to make the trains and planes run on time, get the students there, pay make sure the travel bills get paid, all that stuff. And so I think at this point, the Big Ten, they just want to settle in, lock in their schedules, and not rock the boat for the next couple of years, because there's no reason to.
Yeah.
The timelines are just kind of settling in for themselves.
Well, you mentioned rocking the boat. I mean, the waves from that boat being rocked with the last phase of realignment, the West Coast schools, the Texas, the Oklahoma, is still being felt amongst, I'm talking Mountain West Pack, we're talking WAC. That's still happening and is going to continue to happen. And not to mention, we have another boat rocking just beside us that is this whole new revenue share and all of that. And then another boat just beside that with governance and what's going to happen in Congress. And there's only so much change any organization can take. Talk NCAA at a global level, talk conference at a more regional level, talk school at a local level. There's only so much change that these entities and these administrators can take, and we've had a ton of that. So I'm sure, obviously if you're standing still, you're not moving forward. I get that old adage. But at the same time, you can only push so hard before things start to literally fall apart. And I would guess for a year or two at these big conferences, they'd like to just maybe get this new CFP model, bring in some good cash, be happy with this membership, and then we'll take another bite at the apple.
Absolutely, totally agree. And I really think that is the mentality. And again, I think, would the presidents have jumped at a deal if there was going to be some kind of deal that's going to bring hundreds of millions of dollars of new revenue? Probably. Yeah. But I think now they're to that point. They see it from the AD's perspective of what you're saying. There's already so much change. There's so many things we need to adapt to. Yeah. I mean, this revenue sharing is basically changing how schools do their entire budgets.
Absolutely. We're adding GMs now.
Yes, exactly. So why not just kind of give it a couple years, let's settle in, let's figure out what the atmosphere is, let's figure out how to navigate those waves before we make the next move. And so I think this makes a lot of sense. I think the ADs will be happy, the schools will be happy to lock in that certainty of the next 2 years. Yep. We know this is how many West Coast, East Coast trips we have to make. We know these are the teams we're playing, and so they can kind of gauge what they need to do and accomplish and how they need to settle in over the next couple of years.
Yeah, great. Well, I appreciate the update. A lot of people talk realignment. They want the next big thing. Sounds like maybe the next big thing, at least for the Big Ten, may not be coming really anytime soon, but Lord knows there's a lot that we still have to cover and talk about in college athletics, and we're going to be doing that here on the Mountain. So we thank you guys for tuning into this. Of course, we do everything Big Ten, Mountain West, college realignment, and college football. We have betting picks coming up here at the start of the season, so if you're interested in that, make sure you tune in to those live podcasts. With that, hey, make sure you like this episode, subscribe if you like our content, and we'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.